I think we'll begin. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Adam Odesser. I'm director of the Dr. Stuart Lessons Israel Action Center at the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington. And I'd like to welcome all of you to this update and thank you for being here. And also thank Charlotte Berrios, our Israel Action Center Program Associate, for helping to coordinate today's important webinar. The JCRC serves as the public affairs and community relations arm of the organized Jewish community in our nation's capital, representing more than 100 organizations and synagogues throughout our region. A key component of our work is to empower, train, and mobilize our community to engage with and advocate for Israel. And this continues to be especially critical during the current moment, especially while there are still 59 hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. There is never a dull moment in Israel, as we know, with the reintroduction of judicial reform laws, the ramping up of protests in Israel over the past few weeks, and the resumption of war in Gaza following the recent hostage deal and the pause in the fighting that led to the release of 25 hostages. There is a lot of internal developments in Israel. On the international front, we know the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, met with President Trump yesterday in DC to discuss the regional developments as well as tariffs that are being placed on many countries, including Israel. So there is a lot to discuss, and I want to give Tal as much time as possible. So I will just introduce her briefly and then pass it over to her. So Tal Schneider is the political and diplomatic correspondent for the Times of Israel. She's a former DC correspondent for Ma'ariv newspaper, and she was the creator of the political blog Haplog, where she shared her thoughts on Israeli politics and international affairs. She is a frequent commentator on various Israeli media outlets, and her work has earned her several awards, including the 2015 Veneration Award by the Israeli NGO Ometz for good governance and public integrity, and the 2012 Excellence in Digital Journalism Award by the Tel Aviv Journalists Association. So we are grateful for having Tal joining us here today. And before I pass it over to her, a few housekeeping items. Tal will begin by providing an overview and sharing some of her reflections on the current moment. I will then follow up with a question or two, and for the remaining time, we will be taking questions that come in through the Q&A. So if you have a question at any point, please submit those through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. As I hope to take many of them as possible as time permits. I'd also like to note that this call is being recorded, and a recording will be shared following the webinar, and closed captioning is also available at the bottom of your screen. So Tal, I will now pass it over to you. Again, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Hi, thank you, Adam. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here once again. I think I've briefed you a couple of times in the past. I'm also a former resident of your area, so I feel the neighborhood in Maryland specifically, but elsewhere in the region. And I also want to thank you all for joining us, and I want to thank all of you for supporting Israel. I've been, through the last, 6 months or so, I've been traveling in the United States through several communities out west and in other areas, and I've seen the huge support for the Israeli people, the support that you all give for the cause of the hostages and other causes such as the IDF and more. So it's always really, really good to be an Israeli that knows about all that you're doing for us. Another thing I wanted to say up front is Chag Sameach and happy holiday, Chag Cherut Sameach. We say happy holiday here as well, but obviously we are all thinking and hurting about the situation where we have 59 hostages who will not have their freedom on Passover. Probably it's in a couple of days, and they're still underground in the tunnels, which is it has huge heavy toll on the Israeli people. It's basically, I'm sure you're all following, it's basically item number one on all fronts here. Public polling suggests that the Israeli people are occupied with that more than anything else. They want to end the war in exchange for a complete release of all of the 59 hostages. And you see that in every public polling in the last year, not at the beginning of the war, but right now, it suggests that around 70 to 75% of the Israeli people, sometimes 65%, but usually more than 70%, which is a complete, it's almost a consensus. They want to end the war in exchange for release of all of the hostages. Out of the 59, probably 24 are alive, maybe 22. We don't know that for sure, but a couple of days ago, we just received a new, someone who was not located for, and no one knew about his whereabouts. Nobody has seen him since October 7th. The Hamas sent a video of him. So, I mean, the fact that we don't know, it's 24, maybe 22, but, maybe those two are also alive. We don't know that for sure. By the way, among those 24, there's two, I think one Nepalian and one Thai citizens. I think they're presumed, people think they might be dead, but again, we don't know that. So, so this is number one issue. And every item of the news that we follow, including the trip of the Prime Minister to DC, is through that perspective. Everybody is looking to see what is being said in the Oval Office about the hostages. And we heard President Trump talk very warmly about the meetings he had with the families of the hostages, and the families of those hostages who also are not alive. They also visit him, and he recounted some of those meetings. It has huge importance to the Israeli public to hear him talk about that. And he knows the number 59. He knew the name of Idan Alexander. So all of this, were it's big headlines here when he says that. As I said, the Israeli public really wants to see this deal, getting into a ceasefire in exchange for end of the war. Yet some of the Israeli public, they and the government, this government, they want to continue the war, even though they know there is probably not a chance that they will get the hostages out through military means, because up until now, out of the 250 that were, released or pulled out, most of them were released through agreements. I think about 9 were released from military operations, and some have died, murdered in captivity or killed in a military mistaken operations. So the chances for them to die is higher than, in a military operation, are higher than being released by a military operation. The general concept in the Israeli public is, if you did a ceasefire in Lebanon and you keep on working, making sure that the Hezbollah, the terror organization, is unable to reach the border, why can't you reach the same arrangement with Gaza? Pulling all of the people out, and then later on dealing with the next threat. People are saying that, the thought is that even if you sign hostage deal or ceasefire deal, end of war deal, then you will be able to go back into fighting in case the other side breaches the agreement, which is almost, taken for granted. They always breach it. They always attack Israel. So people, having a hard time understand why the government is not proceeding into a ceasefire. And of course, one of the reasons for that is perceived to be a political reason. We can talk about it a little bit later. People think that if Netanyahu will sign a hostage deal in the end of the war, his government will collapse, and that's the reason he's not pushing for that. Now, we are on the opportunity talking today, just less than 24 hours after Netanyahu met President Trump in the White House. Netanyahu was actually in Hungary, in Budapest, meeting Orban when he was called on by the president to come over. And since he has his plane over there, he just, continued traveling instead of going back to Israel. I think he's still in DC as we speak right now. He should be back on his way to Israel in the next couple of hours, starting the 12 hours trip. And unfortunately, it seems that he did not reach much in this specific visit. he was in DC, I think, probably like 5 or 6 weeks ago, not too long ago, and that was the time when Trump announced the relocation or evacuation of Gaza plan. Some people call it here transfer of Gaza. Some people call it, relocation. You have all of those names. Nothing from this plan has started to roll. We have no information that it's no there is we did not hear about a country that is willing to participate in that, even though Netanyahu said in the White House last night that he is negotiating with several countries. We don't know which one will take them, and if it will, who is willing to get out of Gaza. It's really vague, and we didn't see much of a follow-up on that. Specifically, President Trump did not make a huge follow-up on that last night. He talked about the hostages, as I said, and the big news that came out of this meeting was the direct negotiation with Iran on a new nuclear issue. And, it was, I would say, a big surprise, because Netanyahu, when he embarked the trip from Hungary, again, it was not a planned meeting, and Trump just called him and said, come over probably around Thursday, while Netanyahu is still in Hungary. So Netanyahu, when he presented to the Israeli public his reasoning for this trip, quick trip to DC, he said, we are going to talk about the hostages, we are going to talk about the tariff, the economic situation, the bilateral economic situation between the United States and Israel, with the 17% tariff that we were imposed. And we will talk about Iran. This is a major issue for us. Iran, we want to make sure Iran is not attacking Israel anymore. And this is, and it's kind of an opportunity to take on Iran, because Israel has attacked their radars, and I don't want to go into the military details, but Iran is very vulnerable at the moment, so it's like a good opportunity to do something over there, make sure that they don't proceed with the nuclear plan. And I think, well, all over the Israeli media in the last couple of weeks, there were a lot of talks about upcoming attack on Iran. Even they said the date, Trump gave the Iranians a deadline in May, I think May 12th or something, a 60 days deadline, and everybody were expecting that, getting close to the deadline, and right after the deadline, May 12th, May 13th, maybe there will be a planned, combined attack. Instead of that, Netanyahu got on the record in front of the cameras announcement of a direct negotiations coming up on Seder Eve this Saturday, right? A couple of hours before we'll sit for the Seder night, the negotiation will start. And Trump said, he said it a couple of times, that the press opportunity last night was very lengthy. It was like an hour and a half. Many questions were asked, and Trump answered all of them. And he said, it's going to be top level negotiation. It's going to start on Saturday. It's a direct talk. We'd rather have diplomatic solution than a war. And to us Israelis, since our prime minister keeps talking about attacking Iran and so on, it was like, Netanyahu sitting next to Trump, when Trump says that, it comes off on the headline and, in real life, as Netanyahu endorsing this opportunity, after we kept hearing here that only attacking with military means will bring a solution. That, this goes really against everything Netanyahu said in the last 20 years or so. And he is silent about that. He's not criticizing this administration like he used to do when he criticized former administrations when they said they want to have a diplomatic solutions. And let me all remind you that Trump pulled out of a diplomatic solution on May 2018 with the JCPOA, when Netanyahu convinced him that the JCPOA was very, bad agreement, and Trump pulled out of that agreement, which allowed the Iranians to re-enrich. So they stopped enriching, and then they went back into the enrichment program. So and also money flew in later on under the Biden administration. So a lot of problems occurred when the United States pulled out. But right now, again, we are back on the diplomatic track, and it's not a good, it's not here in Israel. It's not accepted, really in a good way. I would say the least. Having said that, again, as I said, hostages is on the top of the list, and the meeting yesterday, with all the empathy that was, granted, there was nothing was said specifically how to proceed. There is some background talks, but we don't know much. We don't see any solution coming up. Some of the people that are held alive under the ground in those tunnels, we have a set of brothers, twin brothers, and a couple of them are fathers to young babies and kids. They're still held. Some of the soldiers are wounded. At least one soldier that we saw his video in the last couple of days is his name is Matan Angerst. He's heavily wounded, and he was beaten very badly. And we are hearing a lot of information about his situation from the girls, the soldiers, women that came out of captivity. They heard him being tortured in the next door, so they know some of his situation. And there is the American soldier. If there is a deal under the Witkoff suggestion, they talk about pulling out 8 people and 8 bodies, 8 deceased people. From the 8 people, Idan Alexander is the American Israeli, Israeli with an American nationality soldier. He is supposed to be among those who will be, in the 8. And that also might cause some social problem in Israel, because, as we all know, the other soldiers are, at least one of them is severely wounded. And if you are in the Israeli IDF and you need an American passport in order to be safe, that's a problem for our leaders, I would say, the least. But I understand from the American perspective, they want to see that coming to an end. So I can understand that as well. It's, it's a delicate subject, but it's being discussed here heavily. And the third subject on the table was the tariff, the economic situation. And there was some expectation that Netanyahu will come out with, lowering the tariff from 17 to 10, something like that. But he came with nothing. And Trump said, we give you so much assistance, don't expect us to bring it down. It's I know Israel is like a tiny country compared to the United States, but the effect of those 17% may be devastating to this little economy, who is also under just kind of wartime economy. So it's really hard as it is, and the 17% are going to be hurtful here, including probably will bring in some unemployment and more. So I think overall Netanyahu was kind of disappointed. He did not say it. The floor was whole. Trump was talking for almost the 90 minutes. Netanyahu barely said anything. He said, he answered one question. It felt as if Trump wanted him next to him when he announces the resuming of direct starting a direct negotiation with Iran. I think I heard the Iranians say today that the conversation are not going to be direct. They're going to take place in Oman, and they have no intention to sit directly with the Americans. Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. And Netanyahu is going back home for a very complicated political situation, as it happens, sometimes in the United States, when you see the clash between the judicial and the legislative branch and the executive branch. So we are undergoing the same problem, but it's wartime problem. There is a discussion here about Netanyahu just fired his Shabak head, the man who is heading the FBI equivalent entity in Israel, which is Shin Bet, Shabak. Ronen Bar, obviously Ronen Bar is one of the people who are to be blamed for October 7th massacre. Not just him, but the government and security people. And he already said that he takes the blame and he will resign. The problem is that the prime minister, according to Ronen Bar, to the head of the Israeli FBI, he says that the government is taking advantage of the situation to how would I say that, to use the authority in a not proper way. One example, and this is, I'm quoting now from a letter that the bar submitted to the High Court. So obviously there was a High Court very tense meeting this morning in Israel with respect to the firing of Ronen Bar. Some people took to the High Court to say Netanyahu cannot fire him because Netanyahu is trying to do this in order to take advantage of the security operation. In a letter that Ronen Bar submitted to the High Court, he said, Netanyahu tried to use me as chairman of the FBI or the chairman of the Shin Bet in order to not appear in court hearings. Yeah, as you all know, Netanyahu is under court hearings for his criminal charges of breach of trust and bribery and so on. And Ronen Bar said, Netanyahu asked me to submit a court opinion saying I cannot come to testify. This is a grave, if true, it's a grave situation because Netanyahu promised the Israeli people and he promised the High Court that he can do both, be a prime minister and be at court. And he promised, and everybody said, you have a conflict of interest. And he said, I promise you, I will not use my powers to. And of course, he is doing it according to the head of the Shin Bet. Usually, the Israelis are, very trusting in the chairmen of security agencies. But with October 7th, you have a decline in these trust measures. Some people, specifically from people who support Netanyahu, they really upset. I mean, all of the people are upset with Ronen Bar and everybody think he should go, but they also say Netanyahu should go as well. So they think it's like a mixed feeling. They don't go on blaming just the chief IDF, the chief Shin Bet, or the chief Mossad. They also blame the prime minister and the defense minister. So defense minister Gallant is already out. The chief IDF, who was the chief IDF at the time of the massacre, is already out. The prime minister is still in, and the prime minister is trying to fire the Shin Bet and the Shin Bet chair, which causing all of those problems right now, as you all know. So the debate in the High Court today was very, very tense. Some parents who lost their soldiers on October 7th and in the weeks later on appeared in the High Court attacking and yelling at the judges, attacking and yelling at Ronen Bar was not there in the morning, but a former Shin Bet was there. They attacked him. A former Shin Bet chair had to be escorted out from the court. This is a former Shin Bet chair who submitted an affidavit telling how Netanyahu is trying to use the Shin Bet authorities to hurt political opponents as Naftali Bennett and so on. So a dire situation. The court had to just stop the hearing, send everybody out and say, we respect the crowds, but the crowds will watch the debate, the hearing from the video and will not watch it from within. Some member of the Knesset, of the parliament came in, like Congress, kind of congressmen, men and women. They came in and yelled at the judges, people from Netanyahu's party, the Likud. So unpleasant days here. With all of that, Netanyahu is not here, he's in DC. And we are waiting for the court to make a decision with respect to this tangling in the next couple of days, maybe a little bit after the holiday. The way we see it right now is we think the court will go into procedural decision saying, the government needs, if it wants to fire Ronen Bar, it can do it, but only in a due process, which they did not take. They just fired him from, just an announcement. And they conducted a government gathering, but they did not give any explanations and so on. Complicated situation. If I can go into that a little bit further, but it's definitely very complicated and very unpleasant. And it feels as if the judicial overhaul, the judicial coup that we thought, or the judicial reform that went on before October 7th, is back on track. The government and the Knesset, the parliament, just changed one or two bills. They managed to put the reform forward. They're also trying to fire the attorney general. So she is engaged in that, in the hearings, because she's also about to be fired. But the process again is very complicated. So when she's about to be fired, the Likud people and the prime minister say she is in a conflict. They say she's in a conflict of interest because she is. So, I mean, and there is the Qatar gate, which I can talk maybe in the question and answers, because it has to do with the firing of Ronen Bar, the Qatar gate, the engagement of Qatar in Netanyahu's top advisor, with Netanyahu top advisor. So I can go into that shortly if you want me to, because I see it's already 30 minutes, and I want to give you a chance to ask all of those questions.
All right, great. Thank you, Todd. Really for the great overview that you just gave. Yeah, I'm seeing some of the questions coming, and please continue to submit them. I actually kind of want to ask a question more kind of taking a step back and maybe talking about trust, and specifically talking about trust because there's a lot of different, and different the different aspects that you talked about, whether it's what the Israeli public think about Hamas, what the Israeli public think about the current government, what the government thinks about the courts. First of all, how do you think maybe kind of the levels of trust really play into all of these different aspects? Coming to a deal. We know most Israelis, you said most Israelis want a deal to happen, a majority, close to 70%, if not more. But they don't really have trust that Hamas will hold up their end of the bargain. Do they have trust that the Israeli government is doing everything they can to get a deal? And again, the judicial overhaul is, the political environment is always plays a role in this as well. Kind of, what do you get a feel? What's your feel about the levels of trust and how they play into this the outcome to the war, to to seeing an end to having the hostages come home, etc.
Obviously, no one trusts Hamas. It's a complete gruesome terror organization. It has no place in the society. The Israeli public completely support the notion that Hamas should be completely out of the picture. I mean, this is a goal of the war. It was announced on October 8th or so, but nobody knows how can you get there. We do see a lot of demonstrations against Hamas these days in Gaza, but I have to tell you, if you're looking for the Israeli sentiment about what's going on in Gaza with respect to other groups who are not Hamas, I don't think there is any type of trust whatsoever. You have seen the Gaza society highly engaged in this war, even if they're not Hamas supporters. People were, taken hostages into their home. People did not offer any type of help. People did not. I mean, with the gruesome massacre, I mean, there is a very little trust here for anything that comes out of Gaza. This is a complete enemy. And even if they will be managed or ruled by anyone else, they will not be considered as anything else but an enemy. I mean, probably until the end of days. I mean, I don't know, but it's hard for me to see anything comes out of there. Obviously, the main focus is to get the hostages out. So it's not like we trust them, but we need to see the people out. As I said, 24 people alive. We need to see them in their homes, and the rest of them need to be brought out in coffins and led to rest. This is crucial. And Trump talked about it yesterday, said he was amazed by how the Israeli people want to see the dead people out as well. I mean, as a Jewish group of people, and me being Jewish, of course, there's no question. We know what we're talking about. We need to sit Shiva. We need to eulogize them. I'm sorry for the word.
Eulogize.
Eulogized, and we need to pay respects. And I personally, I mean, you can understand how the Israeli people, I mean, I have no family connection to the Bibas, for example, but the other day I found myself driving to the Bibas grave before they led the tombstone, just between the days of the funeral and the days of, so Shiri, Ariel, and Kfir, I just found myself driving there in order to see where they were led to rest. This is crucial to the Israeli people. There are many soldiers that their bodies are being held by the Hamas, including Adar Golding from 2014, but the rest of them from this war, and all of their parents need to see a grave and a place they can mourn their loved one. Also, among the dead, there are many people from the kibbutzim who were 70. I mean, Judy and Chagai Weinsteins, who are Americans, or other people, a Goddard family. They were living in the kibbutz on the border. They did nothing to hurt anyone. They were murdered on a Shabbat morning, on a holiday morning. They need to be brought back. So obviously, the living people are first and foremost. But after, I mean, it's not going to be over until they release the last body. It's not going to be over. The Israeli fight for this. So not any type of trust there. As per trust in the Israeli government, so we keep hearing from people who are engaged in the negotiation, and from people who are in the high ranks in the military, and from people who are, close to the negotiation. I mean, personally, and sometimes we talk as reporters with people we know from the United States who are working on the negotiation. And the fact of the matter is that the Israeli government is probably not pulling as much effort as we thought they should pull in order to finish it. And it's a sad, I mean, and again, it's not just my opinion. If you look at public polling, how many people think the government wants to end the war? How many people think the government wants to see all of the hostages? The numbers are not good for this government. And sometimes they even say it. I mean, it's not just polling, it's not just sources. You have ministers here, including the finance minister and the ministers coming from his party, the religious Zionists, they say it out loud. And at least two groups of this coalition voted against. I mean, Ben Gvir, the Homeland Security Minister, voted against bringing home kids and women more than a year ago. And he explained himself all over the media. So, I mean, and again goes to the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, who was just in the United States 2 weeks ago. He voted against the second deal, not the first one with the women and the kids, but the deal that was just ended with the 25 Israelis and eight bodies that were pulled out. He voted against it, and they go on Israel radio and they provide an explanations for that. So obviously, it's not just hearsay. I mean, we do know that the government, big chunks of this government is unwilling to end the war. The reasoning they say is they want the war to continue because they think we need to finish Hamas, and we are unable to finish Hamas if we do a ceasefire deal. This is their reasoning. And if you look at Smotrich and Ben Gvir, they all, on top of that, they want to have settlements back in Gaza. So there's another layer of explanations. So, and
they also use an explanation. I mean, again, their reasoning, it's a kind of a point to debate if you would want to. Of course, the lives of all the hostages, we want them back. They also argue that, having the deal now would keep Hamas in power, would have more losses in the future for Israelis and IDF soldiers. And again, it's a really important, it's important debate to have whether or not, of course, we want everyone back.
yeah, they say that by voting against the deal, they are protecting the future of the next generations of the Israeli public from being raped, tortured, and kidnapped and killed, murdered, and so on. That's their explanations, and also for that purpose, they want to have settlements back in Gaza. Whereas the other effect of not bringing the people back into Israel, including the IDF soldiers who died or alive, is that people inside Israel that have kids in the military will avoid. I mean, if you have a concept that we are not working on releasing all of the hostages, then who will want to send their kids into the military? So if you look at the future of the security reasoning, it plays into both sides, and you have the layer of settlements that is not hidden. They say it out loud. So there is another layer here that, and again, as I said, most of the Israeli people are not on board with them on that. There is a minority on board on that, and because of that, they take it to a further step. They say it's not just that I will vote against the deal, is I will step out of the government if the deal is signed. And this is what Ben Gvir did. He stepped out of the government back in January of 25 when this current deal was signed. He went back in just now because he said, once you resume the war, I will go back into government. And this is exactly what happened. Netanyahu resumed the war, and Ben Gvir went back in. And specifically for that situation, many people call it, again, this is less a consensus, but at least half of the people call it a political war, because they say Netanyahu went back into resuming the war in order to bring Ben Gvir back into government. This is not 70% support. This kind of type of argument. It's less, but there is this argument, and it has a lot of people who think so. So very complicated, and politically, this government is stable. They will probably go on until June or July of 26, because they just passed the budget, and that gives them a time to breathe in and wait. And that's another situation where people think that Netanyahu is not in a rush to do things because he wants this government to continue. And again, this is the same government that was in power when the massacre took place.
Yeah, a lot to think of here. So I kind of want to take also kind of lead into the U.S.-Israel kind of aspect here and talk about the real. There was a plan that Trump, bombastically announced about relocating Gazans outside of Gaza. It also came up yesterday in the briefing they had between Trump and Bibi. I'm saying, what do you think the Israeli public thinks about this sort of plan? Is it feasible? Would they want this to happen? I'd assume this specific government would want this to happen, and it could happen in various different ways, and different countries kind of playing a role here. Do you think the Israeli public would like to see something like this happen, especially since, as you said, the trust between them and anyone in Gaza is really very, very low, if at all?
You're talking about the transfer plan, the relocation.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's huge support for that here. But basically, many people, they say, yeah, really good idea, but it's not going to happen. I mean, so they support it, but they think it's unrealistic.
Mm.
And if you going to sit and wait until it will happen, it's not a good idea. You need to protect the borders, and you need to protect the borders, and you need to reconstruction of the area, because the area surrounding Gaza is still many places are still burnt, and probably there's up until now there's 11 places, 11 kibbutzim, which are still evacuated, and they need to be completely reconstructed. And the big question is, how do you bring the people home if they are not secure from what's going on beyond the border? So, people with little kids, families are probably, they will not go back, but elderly and young people, they might go back if they know the border is secured. But if you will evacuate Gaza, then it will be more secured. But where they don't think it's a realistic plan, because we don't see any country, and we don't see the Gaza people really want to do that. So I mean, it seems like far-fetched. I mean, I heard Trump says yesterday it's a great piece of real estate, um, which
Yeah.
is, for us, it's a little bit weird, because no one ever talked about Gaza as a real estate, or as a great real estate, or a great location. Nobody ever said that on Gaza before. I don't know what to tell you. It's basically seems to be really detached from reality.
Yeah. Thank you. There's
I
a
mean,
few
even
questions.
if you take 50,000 people out,
Right.
yeah, which is a huge amount of people, you give them money, you give them like transfer or whatever, 50,000. What about the rest?
Yeah.
1,950,000 people, 1,950,000 people. I
Right.
mean,
Someone mentioned in the comments that they heard that Egypt would take 500,000, but again, even if they would take 500,000, I haven't seen that report. But if yes,
listen to me, Egypt. I mean, I've been asking Egyptian diplomats. I said, how many are you willing to take? And he told me not even one. They are, it's more than that. It's not, they say, if you listen to them carefully, it's not only a breach of the peace accords between Egypt and Israel, it's a declaration of war. They say that if you bring Gaza people into Egypt, it's a declaration of war against them. So, I mean, and if there's one thing that Israel need to preserve, is the peace accord with Egypt, Jordan, and the Abraham Accords. No one wants to see those being destroyed. So it will not be Egypt. Maybe it will be, I don't know. It seems all of the plans seems really, really far-fetched and unrealistic. And, I mean,
yeah. Yeah, thank you. So I also want to bring it, you mentioned towards the end of your opening a little about Qatar Gate and Qatar as a player in um, this whole kind of scene with the hostages, now with investigations and into the prime minister and into his surroundings. What role is Qatar playing right now in the Israeli political scene and also in the Israeli public?
yeah, so that's huge story here. You have to understand the Israeli people see Qatar very different from what you, the Americans, see Qatar. It's been well known here in Israel that Qatar played a big role for many years in financing the Hamas. On the day of the massacre, you see Hamas top leaders in Doha, Qatar, praising the massacre and praying. You see Ismail Haniyeh, who is by now has been assassinated, killed, call it as much as anyway. What we see him praying and praising the Hamas people. He was in Qatar at the time of the massacre. You have all of Qatar, all of Hamas leadership being financed and nourished by Qatar. The debate about Qatar was started well before the war. Some people called it an enemy state. Some people called it an enemy state that should be outlawed and so on. And of course, after October 7th, right after blaming Hamas and blaming Iran, people blamed Qatar. The Qatari were rushing to help to bring the hostages out immediately after the beginning of the massacre and the kidnapping, the mass kidnapping. So they put a lot of effort into bringing hostages out, but they had Al Jazeera in here. I mean, even the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, they kicked Al Jazeera out because, as you know, the Palestinian Authority is being controlled by Fatah, which is an enemy of the Hamas. And even Fatah in the West Bank, again, an Islamic party belonging to the Palestinians, which is going against Hamas, even them kicked out Al Jazeera from the West Bank. It's not just us. So it's us, the West Bank, and Al Jazeera is like a mouthpiece to those terrorists. It's some of the reporters, some of the media people actually, they are a terrorist today and a reporter at night, or vice versa. So you have lots of information about that. It's not just So Qatar is because they help bring the hostages out. You can't really, we don't have diplomatic relationship with them, so there is nothing to cut. And what happened is apparently they hired people to represent them in Israel to, build up a good reputation and so on for them before the war and after the war. And some of the people they hired are Bibi top advisors. And you ask yourself, how can that happen? Is because Netanyahu hired people who who could not were not able to become state workers, because one of them specifically was not able to pass the security checks. And Netanyahu, instead of kicking him out, hired him through an outsourcing or so. So he hired a person through outsourcing, and the person, Eli Feldstein, that's his name, was working in parallel for the Qatari. But it's not only him, it's also Netanyahu top advisor, Jonathan Orich, who has been with Netanyahu for many years. So it's not really clear at this point if Orich was really hired or was just like a connection, or what was the game with him. And there's another like an a PR guy, kind of an advertisement type of person who is now out of the country and is not returning to the country. His name is Israel Einhorn, and he was also hired by, so there's like three people. We're not really clear about who got the money and who got the connections, but the three of them were in some sort of and all three of them are top advisor to Netanyahu. So when this guy, Eli Feldstein, was calling reporters to brief them on security issues, apparently at the same time, he was being paid by the Qatari, and the reporters who got the message from him did not know that he's working for the Qatari in parallel for working. I mean, it's not okay when you do that, as if you're a top person of the prime minister. You cannot do it with America or with Belgium or with Sweden or with, I don't know, Germany. I mean, it's not okay anyhow, but with the Qatari that financed the Hamas for all of those years, this is craziness. And Netanyahu, instead of regretting this and kicking the people out, he says this is just a deep state inquiry out to get him. The inquiry is not inquiring him, it's inquiring his top advisors. And they were arrested, by the way. I mean, two out of the three were arrested. The third one, as I said, is out of the country and is not returning. So they were arrested. They were held in arrest. And exactly on the day that Ronen Bar, the head of the Shin Bet, the Israeli FBI, announced that he is inquiring those people, the following day, Netanyahu issued a firing notice to him. So as you can see, the conflicting situation is very, very grave. And it goes even further than that. And it's a problem. It's a huge problem. And I mean, there is revelations in the press every day. The Likud supporters and Netanyahu supporters say it's all about the deep state. The deep state is inquiring, is out to get them, is out to bring the prime minister down. The media is playing together as a deep state with I mean, you know all the terms from United States. The media is playing deep state together with the judges, together with the attorney general, and together with the head of the Shin Bet. And Netanyahu did nothing wrong. And it's a bad situation, really.
Yeah.
Because there's no question the head of the Shin Bet needs to go home. That's for sure. Because he is responsible for the huge failure of October 7th. So you know, when you ask the Israeli public, should he go? People say, yeah, he should go, like more than 50%. But at the same time, they say Netanyahu should go as well. I mean, it's like, I mean, the Israeli people overall, I think they're not buying into the deep state and to all of these concepts. They're not buying it according to polling. I mean, we don't know because we didn't have elections since 2022, but you know, basically it feels like people are not buying into that yet. They still want to see a change of government, and they want to see a change of the head of all of the security operation, because it's a major failure on October 7th.
It seems like they hold responsible whoever was in power during October 7th, whether
So
on the political level or on the military level.
one of the big failures is the fact that Qatar was bringing in money for the Hamas. Now, you have to understand, they were bringing money for the Hamas upon a request by the Israeli government. So this is the reason the Israeli people are blaming Netanyahu, because they know the person who asked Qatar to finance the Hamas. It sounds crazy, I know, but this is what happened, and it's not denied in any way. Netanyahu thought for many years, since 2017 up until 23, he thought that bringing in money will keep things calm. He didn't do it with, you know, in a way, he didn't do it in a, how do you say that? In a, you know, he didn't have negative intentions. He thought the Hamas will be, you know, brought with money, and the money will be important for them to just keep quiet. He was trying to buy quiet time with money. And since the donating countries such as the European Union and others, or the, you know, Emirates and others, were unwilling to provide that anymore, Netanyahu initiated the connection with the Qatari to ask them to finance the Hamas. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, when we blame Qatar, we also blame our government for that.
Yeah. Thank you. So I kind of we are heading we're close to the top of the hour, so I want to be cautious of time. I kind of end with one question. You know, looking ahead to the future a little bit. There's a question, of course, you know, is this two-state solution dead? But I want to kind of maybe a little zoom out also a little bit from that in terms of, you know, regional peace. You know, we know President Trump brokered the historic Abraham Accords, and he would definitely like to see that expanded. We know Bibi is on that same page as well. I think most of Israeli public would also be in the same, you know, would want a more expansive deal with Saudi Arabia and other countries as well. So maybe can you kind of touch on that? What do you see the prospects are for that, and how maybe that would impact the Israeli-Palestinian issue? Um, Again, a two-state solution right now doesn't seem reasonable in terms of, whether it's the trust, whether it's the reality on the ground, but maybe zooming out, how do you see, the coming years, um, Trump's presidency, and, you have Bibi's government holding for a little longer, and then future governments as well.
I'll be honest with you. My sense is that our leaders are not up to it. Netanyahu is in power for many, many years. Is 75 plus, I think, will be 76 in the next, in 20 at the end of 2025. I think it will be 70. I'm not sure, either 75 or 76. And the Palestinian Authority president is 87, 88. He's been in power since ever. He doesn't have elections. I don't think he has any type of support on his side. So, I mean, I don't think the Palestinian people trust the Israelis. I don't think the Israelis trust. I'm not talking about Gaza now. I'm talking about West Bank Palestinians. There's zero trust between the Israeli people and the Palestinian people, the Palestinian Authority. And I mean, I think MBS, the leader of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, I think he's around 40 years old, maybe 40, 41, I'm not sure. He's very young. So you see like this generation gap, really huge generation gap. I think the Saudi leader, since he's so young, he is in no rush to get things done right away. Because obviously if you want to broker something with these leaders of this area, Netanyahu and Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, can you trust Abu Mazen? Can he, I'm sorry to say that maybe he's senile, maybe not. He was a bit senile like a couple of years ago when he was in the hospital. He was hospitalized. He's not very healthy, not very, how do you say that? There's the corruption problems there. Who would you sign an agreement with, really? I mean, who will hold that agreement? And I'm not even talking about our side, who is completely unwilling to go anywhere. And our side, you have the majority of the Israeli public, according to public opinions and according to the results of any elections, that will not support any type of compromise with the Palestinians.
And this also right and left.
Yeah. Well, of course, in the left, you will have people who are more supportive, but with a lot of concerns and a lot of like the chief person for the Israeli left right now, which is Labor and Meretz, they're now combined in one party. The person who is heading them now is a former deputy chief IDF. So even the Israeli left is voting for former generals. This guy specifically, Yair Golan, now has a lot of power in the polls. Many people support him because, by the way, he took on a rifle on October 7th and went down. He's a citizen, right? He's not in the military anymore, but he took a rifle. He went down to the southern area and rescued tens of people from the Nova Festival. He just took them into his car and he went back and forth into the fire, just took people out. So he has huge support in the Israeli left. And he talks about some possibilities in the future, but all of those possibilities will have to undergo major security arrangements. And it's not even halfway to be satisfying to the other side. And who is the other side, really? I'm saying it in a blunt way. It's like an 88 years old leader. It's almost impossible to do anything. And I think, from the point of view of the Saudis, they would probably want to wait a bit. The October 7th is too fresh. And we're not out of the woods here. People still, there is like people bought guns to their homes because the government was nowhere to be seen on October 7th. So people bought lots of pistols and guns into the homes, and some people are leaving the country because they don't feel safe. I don't know where they feel safe because of the anti-Semitism around the world, but they definitely don't feel safe here. People are the situation is not easy, and you can understand that the things that people saw on videos on October 7th were horrifying. So they are unwilling to trust anyone. I'm not trusting the Palestinian Authority, that's for sure, but they're not even trusting the local police or the local military anymore. They just think, you need to bunker down with a gun in your house and, wait. I'm sorry for saying it. It's devastating, but what do you expect from people who went through? I mean, look at my neighborhood. My son was in Gaza for 6 months, and then he was in Lebanon, and then he was in Syria. And I'm not talking about the border. He was inside Gaza and inside all over Gaza. And he's a combat officer in the paratroopers. And such a young person who is not 24 yet, he already has an experience of a year and a half of wars and combat experience. And this is not just him, it's everybody. So, I don't think the people are now, they're still, how do you say, processing what they went through. Families of wounded, families of people who lost their lives, very, difficult situations on the borders. I really, without talking about, Bibi and Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, and Trump, and I think people are not prepared for that right now. Yeah, it's the biggest event since the Holocaust.
Yeah,
When
we
we talk
know that there's big trauma there, and the impact of this war and October 7th, and the war will continue for quite some time, and especially while there are hostages being held and forces being fighting. So first, I hope your son is safe, and I hope all soldiers
He's
come
out
to.
of the military by now,
Oh,
so
that's good, good. And I do kind of want to wrap up because of the time, and I don't want to take too much of your time. So first of all, thank you so much, Tal, and for sharing your thoughts and expertise with us. And I know many of us here in the Jewish community will continue to think about Israel and Israelis, especially with the holiday of Passover coming this weekend, the holiday where we celebrate freedom, and we know that unfortunately not all of us are free. So we will continue to pray and hope for the release of the remaining 59 hostages. And also, I want to invite everyone to, visit our website and our YouTube page for to see all our upcoming events and programs that we've done, to maybe for some hopeful notes about what a future can hold. Like, we hosted a delegation here from an organization called Sharaka, which brings, Israelis and Arabs together. And hopefully that will give people some hope as we come into Passover. So I'll end by wishing you, Tal, a Chag Sameach, and thank you, and everyone, Chag Sameach.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for inviting me. And let's keep our hopes and prayers for the hostages.
Yes, thank you so much, and be well, everyone. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.